The whole congregation of the Israelites sent out from Elim, and Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month, after which they had departed from the land of Egypt. And the whole congregation of the Israelites complained against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt when we sat by the flesh pots and had our fill of bread. But you have brought us out into the wilderness to kill us and this whole assembly with our hunger." The Lord said to Moses, "I am going to rain bread from heaven for you, and each day the people shall go out and gather enough for that day. In this way I will test them whether they will follow my instruction or not. And on the 6th day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather on other days." So Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, "In the evening you shall know that it was the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt, and in the morning you shall see the glory of the Lord, because God has heard your complaining against God. For what are we that you complain against us?" And Moses said, "When the Lord gives you meat to eat in the evening and your fill of bread in the morning, because the Lord has heard the complaining that you utter against God, what are we? Your complaining is not against us, but against God." Then Moses said to Aaron, "Say to the whole congregation of the Israelites, 'Draw near to the Lord, for God has heard your complaining.'" And as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the Israelites, they looked toward the wilderness, and the glory of the Lord appeared in a cloud. And the Lord spoke to Moses and said, "I have heard the complaining of the Israelites, so say to them, 'At twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning have your fill of bread, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God.' And in the evening, quails came up and covered the camp. And in the morning, there was a layer of dew around the camp. And when the layer of dew lifted, there on the surface of the wilderness was a fine, flaky substance, as fine as frost on the ground. And when the Israelites saw it, they said to one another, 'What is that?' For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, 'This is the bread that the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. So gather as much of it as each of you needs, an omer to a person, according to the number of persons, all providing for those people who live in your tents.' And the Israelites did so, and some got more and some got less. But when they measured it with an omer, those who had gathered much had nothing left over, and those who had gathered little had no shortage. And they gathered as much as each of them needed. And Moses said, 'Let no one leave any of it over till the morning.' But they did not listen to Moses. Some left part of it until the morning, and it bred worms, and it became foul. And Moses was angry with them. And morning by morning they gathered it, as much as each needed. But when the sun grew hot each day, it melted. And the Israelites ate manna for 40 years, until they came to a habitable land. They ate manna until they came to the border of the land of Canaan." Friends, this is the word of the Lord.
What a joy it is to be here leading worship this morning with Mr. Victor, the man who was my children's music minister 27 years ago when they were very little. And with my dear friend Marcy, who has been inspiring and delighting me for almost 25 years of friendship. I want to thank her for this invitation. I thank Joanne and Victor and Marcy and the whole staff for their hospitality. And I thank all of you, Calvary, for your witness in this city. It has really filled my spirit to be here this weekend. If God had a resume, this story from Exodus 16 would be on it. Front and center. It is one of the Bible's favorite miracles, one of the mighty acts of God, to use the official language for it, that list of amazing things God has done that Israel committed to memory and recited like it was God's CV. Jehovah, the eternal, the great I am, now I know the original they, them, who made the world in 6 days out of nothing at all, who made order out of chaos, families out of remnants, who delivered the Hebrew people from enslavement in Egypt, who parted seas before them so they could cross on dry land, who sent plagues to torment Pharaoh and closed the waters over his chariots, who gave the people laws to live by and a land to call their own, who defeated every enemy on their way to Canaan, and so on and so forth. The mighty acts of God is an impressive list of accomplishments. Good material to call to mind when the Hebrew people needed reminding that no matter how bad things got, God still had a great resume. God still had plenty of power verbs to exert on their behalf, like delivering and defeating and plaguing and vanquishing, to deal with Pharaoh in any form he takes. And miracles, too. God had done those last-second interventions to give the people victory and freedom and offspring and good governance and a land flowing with milk and honey. Miracles that made the people strong and showed that God was with them. The mighty acts of God is quite a list. And it makes the people look great, too. Like they're the winning team, the company everyone admires. And then there are the other miracles on that list, like in Exodus 16. Stories that are less about victory and more about survival. Finding a way out of no way, except that way is going to take 40 extra years. Making straight in the desert a highway for our God, except that desert is where you live. Manna in the wilderness, because let's face it, it's a wilderness, and uninhabitable at that. It will not sustain life, including yours, unless God steps in. That is not a situation anyone wants to be caught in. A last resort intervention when you've exhausted every other option, and it's going to take a miracle now. Yet sometimes that's what the mighty acts of God address. You wouldn't blame the people if they didn't want to remember those hard times, scrub to the resume so they wouldn't have to. And the fact that they didn't is their gift to us. So what kind of a gift could that be? The book of Exodus tells the story of Israel's enslavement in Egypt and how God appointed Moses to lead them out. It is the key story in Israel's life, the one it will always point to as the cornerstone of its faith. Once we were slaves in Egypt, and God delivered us from Pharaoh. God brought us out. There are miracles, great and small, everywhere you look in that story. Burning bushes and plagues of locusts, the Nile turning into blood with a touch of Moses' staff, the angel of death killing the Egyptians' firstborn while passing over the houses of the Israelites, God parting the Red Sea so the people could escape and then drowning the Egyptian army when they tried to ride through. It is thrilling and awe-inspiring. A story we love to keep telling and that keeps us really on the edges of our seats. Those first 15 chapters of Exodus are packed with suspense, right up to the moment where the people cross over into freedom and dance on the shores of the Red Sea with Miriam to celebrate their victory. That's chapter 15. And then reality hits. We may be out, we may be free, we may be safe from those chariots, but where have we crossed over to? A wilderness. A total desert with no water to drink. It takes exactly 3 verses for the people to start complaining. That is their big verb through the rest of the book of Exodus, complain. They have absolutely no idea how to live on their own in this new landscape. Nothing has prepared them. Moses starts to sweat and then to panic, and by chapter 16, the people are in open revolt. This is verse 2 of chapter 16. Marcy read it. The whole congregation of the Israelites, what? Complained against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. The Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt when we sat by the pots of meat and ate our fill of bread." No, they didn't. "For you have brought us out, Moses and Aaron, into the wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." That's verses 2 and 3 of chapter 16. You know, it's one thing to witness a miracle. It's another thing to need one. And that's where the people are. They are at their lowest, frightened, exhausted, confused, because is this what freedom looks like? Is the only alternative to Pharaoh a wilderness? It is time for God to rain bread from heaven, which is what God does, but in a truly peculiar way. "I've heard the people's complaining," God says to Moses. "Tell them, at twilight they will eat meat, and in the morning they will have their fill of bread, and they will know that I am the Lord their God." And here's verse 13 of chapter 16. "In the evening, quails came up and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. And when the layer of dew lifted, there on the surface of the wilderness was a fine, flaky substance, as fine as frost on the ground. When the Israelites saw it, they said to one another, 'What is it?' For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, 'It's the bread that the Lord has given you to eat. And this is what the Lord has commanded: gather as much of it as each of you needs.'" That's the end of verses 13 through 16 in chapter 16. And so the people did gather it, no more and no less than what they needed for the day. And that was the system for the next 40 years. That was how they ate. It was a wilderness. They couldn't make their own bread. They couldn't grow or harvest anything. They had to wait for God to send what they needed every single day. And each morning, they had to go out and look for it on the ground, gathering up enough just for their household, just enough. If they took too much, it wouldn't keep. It rotted. They couldn't save a few steps by storing up for tomorrow. It was daily bread, daily wilderness bread, constant dependence. It was manna season. It was manna season. That season lasted a long time. If you want to do the math on the manna, I did for fun, which God served up 6 days a week for 40 years, that's 2,433 miraculous meals in a row. A miracle every morning. If we were counting backwards from today, those miracles 40 years ago would have started in October of 1985. I won't ask how old you were then, or if you were born yet, or if you were old enough in 1985 to remember what was happening around you every day, miraculous or otherwise. But let's be clear. A daily miracle was exactly what manna was. And how strange to think all this took place because for the people, it was a season of utter dependence, utter deprivation, a wilderness that would not, could not sustain them. Only God could. It was manna season. I mentioned the gift part of the story. I think it is a gift, this story. That the people decided to remember it, even though it was not their finest hour. It was arguably their worst. Complain continued to be the verb of choice for the people of Israel for the next 2,433 servings of manna. They never did learn to follow God's directions. They never did learn to trust that what they needed would come. They were a stiff-necked people, the Bible says, which you can read in a lot of ways. Maybe stubborn, maybe proud, maybe set in their ways, or preferring to keep their rough spots out of the public eye. Maybe stiff-necked just meant they couldn't turn around on a dime and change overnight, or over 2,433 nights. Whatever stiff-necked is, it sounds like it could be us. And I am grateful that the people left that in the story without cleaning it up so that we can recognize ourselves in it. And that is what the Bible is, you know? A collection of scripts that one day we are all going to have to play. One day it will be manna season for us. And this story will be what we're living for a long time. Maybe you've already experienced it. Or maybe you're living it now. I will admit that I wake up each morning and have to weigh whether I'm going to read the headlines now or later in the day when I might have more strength. It can make a difference. I might be so horrified by what I read that it takes a minute to get out of bed. I might find myself saying yet again, wait, that can't happen, can it? Maybe you can relate. Or maybe you have your own version of manna season, trying to live in an inhospitable, unsustainable climate. Not wanting to admit that a formerly self-sufficient person could have absolutely no idea of how they're going to make it through the next few years without despair or denial, which is not a river in Egypt, no matter what the old joke says. Maybe you, like many of us, are wondering if God has any miracles left, because it might take one to lead us out of here. And maybe the miracle is the gift of this story itself. Exodus chapter 16, when the people realized they were stuck here in a wilderness rather a long time, and it was manna season. Time for wilderness bread, and to trust that God would keep sending it. Time to go out and gather it themselves, learning how much might be enough to nourish them for that day. Time to see this bread as a miracle in itself, that God will provide enough glimpses of kindness and humanity and community and generous love to get them, to get us through. And that there would be plenty of places to look. In the wilderness, in this city, this church. If we hope to make it through manna season, we are going to need one another. I know you know that. So ask one another, tell one another, what do you need today to feed a piece of your soul? What does your manna look like this morning? And where did you have to go to find it? And what miracles have you witnessed that might feel like the miracle I need? What can we do together to be a little less stiff-necked so we don't have to pretend to be what we're not? Exodus 16 isn't a cautionary tale. It's a miracle story. And it might be just enough bread to pass around the table. Amen.